Let's take a look at some information and charts on Ren for BraveNewCoin. So Ren, one of the original bridgers, I guess. They call it inter-blockchain liquidity. Essentially how this works is you send nearly any coin you want to the bridge, Ren VM, and it spits out the Ren version of that coin on the specific chain you want it on. So you can send it BTC and it'll spit out Ren BTC. And then when you want your BTC back, you can send your Ren BTC back to the VM and get your BTC back in its original form. I don't think this was called bridging at the time. I think bridging is a relatively new term to DeFi, but maybe I'm wrong there. I kind of think of atomic swaps as bridging too, but maybe I'm too boomer in that thinking. Anyway, so Ren does all this through dark nodes, which get paid for their services through fees. And you can see the fees down here just in this little schematic. These dark nodes require 100,000 Ren. So that has a bit of a supply soak component to it. And ideally is bullish for token price. So the more dark nodes, the better, as with any proof of stake type of component there. And they have multiple chains now. It used to just be on ETH, but as the bridging narrative has really taken off, Ren has blossomed into a beautiful flower that it always wanted to be. It's on Phantom, Polygon, Avalanche, Solana, Arbitrum, and you can see all the fees here, minting and burning. You can see the value locked based on the dark nodes. Volume's just increasing rapidly. ETH fees are really helping the bridgers because it gives people a reason to use them. It gives them a valid use case, right? If ETH fees were nothing, nobody would really care about bridging or inter-blockchain liquidity because they would just live on ETH, right? They would live on the ETH version of whatever. They would still need bridging to some degree to move things like BTC, Luna, whatever onto those chains. But I don't think the bridging chains and the bridging to bridge chains, like they wouldn't exist in their current form if ETH fees were low. And it looks like as a percentage, BTC and Luna are the top two, Doge, Filecoin, Zcash. That's value locked across all chains here. Now we can dig a little deeper on the dark nodes. I'd like to see the geographic distribution. Sometimes this loads for me, sometimes it doesn't. But ideally, as with any decentralized network, you want nodes all over the world. You want nodes controlled by all sorts of different people. You don't want any large group of people with the same ideals controlling this network, because then it can become captured in some way, either by law enforcement or snooping or whatever. The dark nodes then kind of lose their luster, if you will. Part of the use case here is that we can do this without KYC AML, that's for sure, which is a regulatory nightmare. And regulation's probably coming in that regard. But the draw to this is that you can do large transfers without getting noticed by the market, right? Potentially. That's the idea anyway. And you can see the total network fees here. I believe since inception, they have current cycle fees as well. So this is what the nodes are getting paid. So as with any master node, if you are bullish on the coin, plus you're getting paid, plus price is actually moving up of the coin, that's a double whammy. So these Ren bonded master nodes are probably extremely happy with price action and fees right now, as bridging is really taken off. Like I've said, as ETH fees decline, bridging's going to decline. These cycle fees are going to decline. Bonded Ren is probably going to decline. So it's all feeds into itself. It's a feedback loop, definitely. But they're sitting pretty right now. And Ren's TVL currently at 1.54 according to DeFi Llama, which is quite a ways down the list. Total TVL across everything at all-time high. TVL by chain is mostly ETH here at 1.2 billion, followed by Solana, Phantom, Binance, then a little bit on Avalanche. But it's good that Ren and other chains like Ren are going multi-chain. They're experimenting. They're open. They're welcoming. The more the better, right? If you're a bridger, you want to be able to bridge anything, anywhere, anytime. You don't want any friction. You want to click a few buttons and you're done. And I think Ren definitely helps you do that. And if we look at Ren's TVL over time, it had a bit of a renaissance, if you will, as the bridging narrative took off with TVL increasing. And maybe for Ren more so than everything else, TVL is more relevant to price because of bonding and fees and kind of how things are built on the chain there. Kind of like SNX If you see a lot of lending and borrowing on SNX, you probably see a bullish SNX token because you need the token to make the synthetic assets. So you want to see bridging chains probably increasing in TVL more so than maybe lending and borrowing protocols, for example, or DEX tokens. If we compare wrapped BTC to Ren BTC, wrapped BTC is full KYC AML. Legacy people can use it. You're not going to get in trouble with law enforcement, for example. Whereas Ren, I'm not saying it's all criminal activity, but it's not something that traditional finance players can likely use because of law enforcement concerns, regulatory concerns, KYC AML, right? These are all real things to the legacy players. And if we look at the market share here, it's over 90% wrapped BTC relative to Ren BTC. Now you can do different things with each version here, but ideally, in a perfect world, whatever you can do with wrapped BTC, you can do with Ren BTC. You can lend it in a curve pool or whatever. And ideally, you can trade either version as BTC in DeFi in any chain, right? That's a perfect world. Not necessarily the case, but that's also going to influence market share of wrapped BTC versus Ren BTC. If you look at Ren's token stats, transaction counts essentially at all-time lows. They rose up a little bit with speculation as price was rising, but now they're down significantly. Transaction values rising basically at all-time highs. No one's moving small amounts of this thing on chain. That partly could be because of the masternode component. If you're buying a masternode and then moving it onto Ren VM or whatever, that's 100,000 Ren, right? So that's not going to be a microtransaction. That's going to show up as a big spike here. One thing I'd like to see is much like Dash, to see dark nodes over time. My guess is they would correlate with price highly. As more dark nodes increase, you're going to see price increase because of that supply soak component. And as nodes relax or decrease like they are now, you're probably going to see a decline in price, because if you're removing a dark node, you're probably selling the Ren, which is going to apply selling pressure. I think for most people that's probably intuitively obvious, but just in case it isn't, I'll point that out. Looking at NVT versus active addresses here, NVT in the line, NVT rising rapidly, telling you market cap is overbought relative to on-chain activity, and that may or may not be important for any DeFi token, but active addresses continue to just sit quite low for the token itself. This is, again, one of those coins where TVL is probably more important because of what it does functionally. And active addresses, or collectively, this isn't bullish, right? Rising NVT, falling active addresses, falling transaction counts, not bullish. MVRV relative to price, a better metric than NVT for me. Doesn't really give you a signal here. Ideally, you're seeing MVRV top out at around a 2x multiple for most coins, with price at all-time highs or relative all-time highs, local highs, that sort of thing. Historically, this hasn't been the case really for any DeFi token. So as Ren was hitting all-time highs, MVRV was not at all-time highs, not even close, right? So there's no top signal here. Maybe the bottom signal is relevant at anything below 0.7 has generally been a good time to buy a relative low. But the MVRV multiple, market cap relative to on-chain activity, hasn't really been relevant for any DeFi token, at least to find a signal to buy and sell. Talked about this with Aave, but Ren is also in this. This is the Bitwise DeFi crypto index, and the more legacy funds and involvement and just visibility for DeFi stuff, the more things like Ren will be in the conversation to people who aren't exposed to this stuff every day. So it's really good exposure for Ren to be included in indices like these or in grayscale products, that sort of thing. Whether or not that'll translate into people buying them and token accrual is another story. But the first step is to get people to know that this stuff even exists in the first place and to understand what they can do with it. And then they obviously decide from there whether or not they want to buy it and if it has a future, whatever. But at the very least, you need to get it into people's heads that it is a thing. Flipping gears to technicals, this is the 365 MA in the green, the 5x multiple in the red, and the midline in the white here. How this generally works is it's an oscillator. The better times to buy are when it's closer to the green or in the green, below the 365. The better times to sell are when it's above the red or closer to the red. So currently we're kind of in between midline and green. This was a very good buy in hindsight now, but even if you just trade this verbatim as buy zone, sell zone, buy here, just keep buying, don't stop buying. The expectation here is that eventually rips to the higher side of this at around 350. So not a terrible buy here, but the better buy was obviously, when it told you to buy. So backtesting is sound. And if we look at the 183 MA or the 365 on the 12-hour, you also get a decent signal. And again, it's telling you 350 is basically the target. Anything between 2 and 350 is a great sell relative to 365 MA. Looking at the 5200 EMA yearly pivots, VPVR volume and RSI, you did get a really good signal here on the bull cross to tell you to buy, and you've gotten a significant upper thrust here. We're still in the yearly pivot scrum, so we're not at risk of collapsing down the ladder or anything. There's plenty of levels on the way up to look forward to testing, but nothing, no super signal or anything like here telling you there's some massive support at the current level or anything like that. It is bullish, like I said. It's got a bullish cross. It's above the 200. It's above volume stuff. RSI looks a little tired for sure. This whole thing was a growing bearish divergence. Higher highs in price, lower highs in RSI, and it probably just needs some time to figure itself out on the USD pair. At this point, if you've traded this from the previous triangular support that this created on the yearly pivot, you're probably happy with your 70 cent per coin profit, and you're probably rotating into other stuff that hasn't moved yet. That'd be my guess. On the cloud, it's still above the cloud, still above the Kijun. Everything looks fine trend wise, but it probably just needs some time to relax. It's very choppy. It kind of looks like Tezos in that it wants to go up, but it also doesn't want to go up. Every time it has a momentum push, it just gets smacked down over and over and over again. Maybe that's just all-time high retest type stuff where there's a ton of people trapped, or there was a ton of people trapped at these levels who just can't wait to sell. If you were buying at $1 previously and held to 20, 30 cents, you are excited to get out at this level, probably. And that's probably what you're seeing here with the mega chop at those levels. Ren against BTC has been in a multi-month, kind of multi-year range at this point. Potential Adam and Eve, potential bullish continuation eventually. It doesn't look good enough here. It doesn't look like it's on a springboard or anything like that to want to buy for me. Bullish trend-wise, but that's kind of where it ends as far as expectations are concerned. So it's probably just a multi-month sit out on this pair and just wait till it's above 2,500 sats again, or it's near 800 sats where it would be a better buy based on the range. Buy the range low, sell the range high sort of thing. And against ETH, it's pulled up quite a bit, but the question here trend-wise is, does it have more in it to go? And I don't know. It's basically a 2x from the bottom, and it probably just needs more time. It's consolidated here previously, multiple months. What you want to look for is a bullish 5,200 and an eventual push to probably 0.007, something like that, whatever this yearly pivot is. And this may turn out to be some massive inverted head and shoulders thing. I don't know, but that's probably a year away. But if you wait and watch for it, you're probably going to see it. This here, just like on Link against ETH, was a multi-month head and shoulders that broke down. You got your death cross. It was volatile, but eventually did break down, So it may be the case here where it's going to be super volatile, but eventually this thing will break up. I don't know. It just doesn't, like BTC pair, it just doesn't look good enough to want to even buy or pay attention to at this point in time. So Ren definitely has a valid bridging use case, inter-blockchain liquidity use case. Probably gets into a little bit of regulatory hot water without a KYC AML component. Probably never enables that, and may get geofenced from the US eventually, but in its current form, accessible to all. On-chain stats look weak, kind of like all of DeFi. TVL looks great, which is good for Ren. USD pair looks bullish, but extremely choppy, forecast ahead. And the BTC and ETH pairs look neutral and bunch of nothing, honestly. So lastly, I'll just mention the ETH BTC fund and DeFi portfolio. I trade for Techme Capital Enzyme to finance a non-custodial portfolio management tool where you can send ETH or USDC or just watch what I'm doing. You can see everything, including AUM performance allocation, all of the coins I'm in here. Ren was in here at one point in time. You can also see the vaults I'm in on Yearn, Comp, and Aave, as well as the trades in the trades tab down below. That's all I have for this one. Like, dislike, comment, share, subscribe, and happy trading.